morning, everyone. So today we are going to continue our discussion under normalization, and we'll be focusing upon functional dependencies. In the previous session, we had a discussion, introductory discussion rather, about normalization. So we have seen what is normalization. So normalization is a technique to design the relations in the database system having desirable properties given the information related to enterprise. So we are supposed to generate the relations having some desired properties. So what are those desirable properties? First is we should have minimum number of attributes. So whatever data that we would like to store in our database, we should try to use minimum number of attributes to store all the information that is required. Secondly, attributes with close logical relationships should be grouped together. So attributes with close logical relationships should be grouped together so as to form a single relation. So here we consider the semantics of the attributes. So whichever are the attributes, those are related to one another, having some kind of a logical relationship among them, those attributes need to be grouped. And third important point is we should have minimum redundancy while designing our relations, right? So these are the desirable properties for the relations, and normalization is the technique to incorporate these desirable properties in our relations, right? So as to build a good database design, right? Further, in the last session, we have started discussing informal design guidelines. So these informal design guidelines are imparting clear semantics of the attributes in relations, reducing the redundant information in tuples, reducing the null values in the tuples, and disallowing the possibility of generating spurious tuples. So in fact, we have discussed first two guidelines, right? We were talking about the informal design guidelines, and we have covered first two guidelines, imparting clear semantics of the attributes in relation. So knowing the semantics of the attributes, it will help us to come up with some relations, right? Secondly, we have discussed about reducing the redundant information in tuples, and we have gone through three kinds of anomalies that we may have if we are having the bad design of our database or relations. So bad design of our relations will result in the anomalies of three kinds: insertion, deletion, and updation, right? So we should avoid such kinds of anomalies, and we should design the database or the relations systematically so that we are not having any redundant information. The third guideline that we are going to discuss now is reducing the null values in the tuples. So the guideline number 3 says that relations should be designed such that their tuples will have as few null values as possible. So if we are designing a database, then we should take care that the attribute values are not nulls. So we should design relations such that the tuples, those are the records, those we are going to store in that relation will have as few null values as possible. So we should not encourage storing the null values because handling the null values is little complicated. So if there exist any attributes, those are having null values many times or frequently the null values are there for a particular attributes. Then what we can do is we can create a separate relation having such attributes wherein maximum number of times the attribute values are null, and we may add a primary key in that relation so that the attributes having frequent null values will be kept aside, right? So that need not be handled frequently. Okay, so these are the guidelines for reducing the null values in the tuples. So what are the reasons for null values? In fact, we had a discussion earlier about null values. So we are having three important reasons why we are having null values or why we need to store null values for the attributes. Number one, attribute not applicable or invalid. So what we mean by that? Many times it happens that we are designing a relation and there are few of the attributes, those are not applicable for all the records. I'll repeat, we may come up with a design such that few of the attributes are not applicable to all the records or the tuples those we are storing in the relation. What we mean by that? Say for example, suppose I am having a relation, say right, and we are storing ID of the instructor, name of the instructor and address of the instructor, but address is split into several subfields. Say for example, we are storing the street, the locality, the zip and so on, right? Now sometimes whenever we go for storing the data in such a relation, what happens is we are storing these attribute values are available, but not necessarily all those values or all those attributes are applicable for each and every record. It may happen, right? So meaning that these attribute values are applicable for few of the tuples and these values, these attributes are not applicable for a few other tuples. So if they are not applicable for some tuples, then we should put here null value. In the nulls. Second is the attribute value is unknown, but that may exist. So what does this mean? Attribute value is unknown, but that may exist. Meaning, whenever we are inserting the data into a relation, we are not knowing the value for that attribute. But that value may exist, but we are not knowing whenever we are inputting the data. So if at the time of inputting the data, if we are not knowing that value, then also we need to input the nulls. right? So that is the second reason for having the null values. Third reason is value known to exist but unavailable. So here in second case, attribute value is unknown, not known, right? But that may exist. So we are not sure whether that exists or not, right? In third case, we are very sure that the value exists, but at the end, whenever we are inputting the data, that is unavailable, right? So after some time, it may be available. Here, value is unknown at the time of inserting the data, and that may exist. We are not sure whether it exists or not, right? But at the time of inserting the data, that value is unknown. Here, the value is unavailable, not known while inputting the data, but we know for sure that that value is existing, and after some time, we may get that value. Right? So these are the possible reasons for having the null values. Okay? So we should take care that while designing the relations, we should avoid the design such that the tuples in the relations will have very few tuples will have null values for the attributes. Otherwise, all the attribute values are available, right? So, minimum use of null values. Fine. Next, the fourth guideline, informal guideline, is disallowing the possibility of generating the spurious tuples. Disallowing the possibility of generating the spurious tuples. So, what we mean by that? Many times, if I am having two relations, first is say relation R on schema R, and suppose second is relation S on schema S. Okay. Now, many times it happens that we need to have a join of these relations. Many times, because some information is available in this relation and some information is available in this relation. And many times we need to join the relations so that we can extract whatever information is required. So join operations are very popular whenever we are extracting the information from the database. Now, bad designs of relational database systems may result in erroneous results for such join operations. So, if we have not designed this relation schema R and this relation schema S properly, then it may happen that whenever we use this join operation, it produces some erroneous result. So, to avoid this, actually, while designing the databases, the lossless join property is used to guarantee that we are getting the meaningful results for any join operations. So what is important is whenever we are using the join operations on the relations, then lossless join property need to be guaranteed. So if we are having the relations, those satisfy this lossless join property, then that is a good design. And if the relations are not satisfying this lossless join property, then we say that it is a bad design. So we should always avoid such kind of bad design, right? So in this situation, we may say that the bad design of a relation will result in erroneous result for join operations. And lossless join property ensures that whatever join operation that we are using, it will produce only meaningful results. Right? Based on these concepts here, designed to satisfy lossless join condition. We are going to have detailed discussion about designing the relations having the lossless join property, right? So we are going to discuss it later. But please remember, the relations should be designed to satisfy the lossless condition. Spurious tuples should be generated by doing a natural join of any relations. What we mean by spurious tuples? Spurious tuples means the tuples that represent some invalid, meaningless information. So whenever we are using the natural join, say for relation R and relation S, if it generates some spurious tuples, that means if it generates some tuples, those are meaningless, providing us some invalid information, then such relations we should avoid. Right? So we should come up with the relations such that whenever we go for join of these two relations, they should always provide us some meaningful results. They should not generate any spurious, unwanted, invalid data. Right? So these are 4 important guidelines, informal guidelines I am saying. Okay, the formal process of normalization we are going to discuss later, right? But these are few informal guidelines, those we need to understand while designing our database. So far, whatever we have learned or whatever method that we followed for designing the relational schema was top-down to this design, and this top-down approach was using the ER modeling, right? And we followed these steps that we have gathered the information, the requirement analysis is being done, and based on the requirement specification, what we did, we tried to build the ER model, and afterwards that ER model was converted into the relational schema. Right? So this is the approach that we have followed. Okay, so this approach is known as the top-down approach. Okay, so what we did, we used ER model, and then ER model is mapped or converted to the set of relations, and we come up with the set of well-designed relations. Okay, now the other approach that is known as bottom-up approach. So what we do in bottom-up approach? In bottom-up approach, we do not go for ER modeling. Instead, we make use of all the attributes together. We group all the attributes together. Those are describing the data from the enterprise. Okay, and what we do next is we use the process of normalization to come up with the set of relations. Right? So this process is known as the bottom-up process.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So we have seen one approach so far, and that was the top-down approach, wherein after collecting the data related to enterprise, we used to follow the steps like preparing ER model. In bottom-up approach, we are not going to follow these steps, but instead, whatever is the data available, based on that, we come up with the attributes and we use the normalization process to create the set of relations. Right? So this bottom-up process is one of the important processes to come up with the set of well-designed relations. Now, even though we are following top-down approach for database design, we are having the set of relations, those are well designed. Then what is the role of normalization if we are following top-down approach? Even though we have followed top-down approach for database design, there is a role for normalization. And the role of normalization here is to validate our relations. So even though we are using top-down approach, what we can do next is we may apply the normalization techniques to validate or to check whether the set of relations those we have created are having a good design. Right? Now, no doubt, if we are having correct ER model, we come up with a good relational model, no doubt. But still, there is a scope to validate our database design by making use of this normalization process. Right? So, this is how the normalization supports the good database design. In one approach, what we do, we are having the collection of attributes and we make use of normalization to come up with this set of well-defined relations. Right? In the second approach, in top-down approach, we follow ER model, we build relational model, and now normalization is being used to validate whether our design is correct or whether our design is good. Right? So this is how this normalization technique helps us. If you have any doubts, please let me know. Yes. Is there any doubt? Have you understood the top-down and bottom-up approaches and how normalization supports the database design? Yes? Any doubts so far?
Ma'am, can you repeat once again?
Okay. See, whenever we go for building any database application, right? The first is to collect the data from the enterprise, right? So gathering of data, so these are various data sources from which we are supposed to gather the data and we should come up with the requirement specification. Once our requirement specification is ready, then actually we need to proceed with design of a database. So we are having two approaches, a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. So far, we have gone through the top-down approach for database design. So what was that top-down approach? Once the data has been collected and analyzed, we come up with the ER model. and based on that ER model, we apply certain rules and we convert that ER model into a relational schema. So ER model is mapped to the set of relations. So that is the process that we have followed so far, right? So in fact, we are here by applying these steps. So far we have applied this process and we are now having the well-designed relations with us. Do you agree with me? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine.
Yes,
Now we are talking about the other way of database design. So in this other approach of database design, we say that this is a bottom-up approach. So what we do in this bottom-up approach, we collect all the attributes together, right? Say for example, if we are talking about the university schema, then we are having the instructor ID, right? We are having the instructor name, we are having salary of the instructor, we are having department name of the instructor, we are having building where the department is located, right? Then we are having budget of the department, we are having course IDs, we are having course titles, we are having credits for the course, we are having the information like which department is offering that course. Similarly, we are having student ID, student name, and so on. Lots of information is available. After collecting this data, analyzing this data and coming up with requirement specification. So we are having lots of attributes now. Those we have identified. Meaning we need to store all this information in our database. Right? So right now we are having only this collection of attributes that we would like to store. Or these attributes are telling us what information we would like to store. That's all. We are having only this part. After this process. Now, what to do with this data? In earlier approach, we came up with ER model and then we converted it into a relational model, right? But now we are having lots of attributes, thousands of attributes maybe, right? And we are supposed to make use of these attributes to come up with well-designed relations. So here, once we are having such kinds of attributes, what we can do is we can apply the process of normalization. So here is the role of normalization. So we apply this normalization process on these attributes, those we have. So initially we are assuming that all those attributes belong to a single relation, right? But this is a very bad design. In fact, initially all the attributes are dumped into a single relation, and what we are going to do is we are going to apply normalization process, which is a bottom-up technique, to come up with well-designed relations, right? And what is this normalization process? That actually we are going how to normalize the data. Given such kinds of attributes, how to come up with the meaningful relations, well-designed relations. That process of normalization is the process that we are going to discuss in this unit. Right? So this is the another approach, bottom-up approach. We are having all the attributes dumped into a single relation, and then we are applying normalization, and this process of normalization will give us well-designed relations. Right? So this is another approach known as the bottom-up approach. But as I stated, even though we have followed this top-down approach, there is a scope to use normalization here also. And here the normalization is the process that can be used to validate whether all the relations, those we have come up with by making use of top-down approach, are really good. Those are satisfying the norms of database design that can be validated, right, by making use of this normalization process. So whichever is the approach that we are following, maybe it is top-down approach or the bottom-up approach, normalization plays important role. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So let's proceed now with the concept of functional dependencies. So functional dependency describes the relationship between the attributes. So functional dependency is a property that describes the meaning or semantics of the attributes in the relation. The semantics actually indicate how attributes relate to one another and specify the functional dependencies between the attributes. So the semantics actually are describing how the attributes relate to one another, and these semantics are actually specifying the functional dependencies between the attributes. When there exists a functional dependency, the dependency is specified as a constraint between the attributes. So let's see first what we mean by this functional dependency. Let us assume that we are having a relation schema R. So in this relation schema R, we are having 4 attributes A, B, C and D. Okay, and we are describing a functional dependency of this form, A arrow B. Right, so this is actually my functional dependency. So we are having a relation schema R with 4 attributes A, B, C, and I'm having a functional dependency A arrow B. So what does this mean, A arrow B? A is the attribute of schema R. B is also the attribute of schema R. So if we are having a functional dependency from A to B, this means that B is functionally dependent on A. Please understand it carefully. B is functionally dependent on A. Or in other words, we may say that A functionally determines B. A functionally, we denote it like A determines B. A functional dependency. A determines B. So, let us try to interpret it further. What we said A and B are attributes of relation and B is functionally dependent on A. B is functionally dependent on A. So what it indicates actually? It indicates that each value of A is associated with exactly one value of B. I'll repeat. If I'm having a functional dependency such that A determines B or B is dependent on A, then how to interpret this? This means that value of A is associated with exactly one value of B. A is associated with exactly one value of B. And here please note, right now in our example, this A is a single attribute and this B is single attribute. But sometimes it may happen that instead of a single attribute, we may have this set of attributes determining another set of attributes. So it may happen that one set of attributes determines another set of attributes. Right? So let us see the formal definition of functional dependencies and then we will conclude this session and we'll continue our discussion in the next lecture at 11. Right? So today we are having one more session. So we'll continue our discussion in that session. So let's first go through the formal definition of functional dependencies. Okay. Now, one more term that I would like to mention here is attributes on the left hand side of the functional dependency. So if I am having a functional dependency A determines B, then A is my determinant. Right? So whatever is there towards left hand side of the arrow, that is called as a determinant. Okay. Now let us see this definition formally. So let R be a relation schema and we are having two subsets, alpha and beta. Both are subsets of this relation schema capital R. Right? So obviously this capital R is the relation schema, meaning this R is having some set of attributes. And alpha, beta are subsets of R, meaning alpha is also set of attributes that belongs to R. Beta is also set of attributes that belongs to R. Okay. Now, the functional dependency, if we write alpha determines beta, the functional dependency of the kind alpha determines beta, where alpha is subset of R, beta is also subset of R. Then this functional dependency holds on the relation schema R if and only if for any legal relations are on R, whenever any two tuples T1 and T2 of R agree on the attributes alpha, they also agree on the attributes beta. That means if for two tuples T1 and T2, if the alpha values are same for two tuples T1 and T2, if alpha values are same, then it implies that for these two tuples T1 and T2, beta values are also the same. functional alpha to beta. Are you getting me? Yes? Are you getting me? I'll give you one example. Suppose I'm having instructor table. Right? So in our instructor table, we are having 4 attributes. So my R comprises of ID, name, salary and department name. Right? And let us define the functional dependency like ID determines name or ID determines salary. Any functional dependency. Now, if I am having this functional dependency ID determines salary, this ID is nothing but alpha and this salary is nothing but beta. So here we are having the single attributes as alpha and beta, which are subsets of R. But it may happen sometimes that alpha and beta is collection of attributes from R. Okay. Now, if I say that salary functionally dependent upon ID or ID determines salary, then if I am having 2 tuples, say T1 and T2. So I am having attribute ID and salary right now. Those are functionally dependent, ID determining salary. So if ID value of tuple T1, say 101, and for this ID 101, say salary is 50,000. Okay, so this is my tuple T1 and this is my tuple T2. If in my tuple T2 also I am inputting say ID equal to 101. Now, if my alpha values match, I am having the dependency that is ID to salary, ID determining salary. So if ID matches for 2 tuples, then my beta values, that means my salary must match. So if once again my T2 is having ID equal to 101, the beta value must be the same, 50,000. It will never happen that one instructor is having 2 different salaries. If this functional dependency exists, ID determines salary is the functional dependency. So ID is determining salary. So if I am having 2 tuples with same ID, the salary must also be the same. Got it? Yes? Have you understood the concept?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So we are going to extend our discussions related to functional dependencies. These are very important concepts. So be careful and understand it properly. If you have any kinds of doubts, please do not hesitate to ask, because based on these concepts only, we are going to build our theory of normalization. And this is really, really very important. So our basics should be very clear. Right? So if you have any kinds of doubts, please feel free to ask the doubts. So let's stop discussion in this session and we'll extend our discussion in the next session today. So thank you.